Hey, so I found my hat. Well, I've had this idea. Maybe I ought to start a Kickstarter campaign to have a new hat for every video. So just in case, anyway, I'm just mumbling. Let's take a look at a lens that I just acquired. It is the Rokinon Cine. That's a mouthful. 24mm t1.5. Let's go take a look. So this to me was kind of a weird lens. I have a couple of 24 and 28mm lenses in my collection, vintage. So this is my first modern version of that lens, and I of course have a Canon 17-55 zoom, so I actually calibrated a couple tick marks on the lens so I know where 24 is on that. And I put this lens on the camera, and it's a little bit wide. It's a modest wide angle, but it just didn't knock my socks off at first. It's one of these lenses that you need to explore and learn. Now, for example, it's not super wide. Wide angles are easy to have fun with. It's not super long where you've got absolutely no depth of field, so you can just focus somebody's eyes in and the tip of their nose is out and their ears are soft. It's one of those in-between lenses. Now, for example, I'm shooting myself with that lens right now. I mean, fair test. And you can see that I'm sharp and we got some depth of field forward and a little bit backward, but it's not super soft in the background, but I still have that separation, and I'm actually at T1.5. Unfortunately, YouTube compression is really not going to show you the fact that this lens is pretty sharp wide open, very, very respectable. So here are some shots that I took on a job where I really realized the sweet spot of this lens is basically shooting it wide open or very close to it. When you shoot this lens wide open, you have that shallow depth of field and you need to get close with it. You can't be bashful about this lens. This is a lens that wants to get in close. In fact, it focuses super close, probably just 3-4 inches from the front of the lens, which I guess is about 8 or 9 inches or 12 inches from the focal plane. Regardless, it still focuses super close, so you can use that to get some very good depth of field effects from a lens that you didn't quite expect was going to give you that sort of effect from being a slightly wide-angle lens. So putting some foreground in front of this lens that's going to drop out of focus is a really good thing to do with this lens. So a 24mm lens is something that you kind of need to learn to work with. It's just like any other lens that you may own. And I find that even though I have a zoom, I'm using the primes a lot more often, mostly because I can open them up beyond 2.8. I can go to 2 or 1.5, depending on what they are, and really capitalize on that super shallow depth of field effect when it's appropriate. Check out this audience shot where I'm shooting it wide open with a lot of ND, C300, 6 stops of ND, ISO all the way down, and yet I can still focus on 1 or 2 people while dropping the background out and getting nice separation between foreground, center of focus, and background. Again, I need to say that this is a lens that really shines when you shoot it fairly wide open. And it'll work great for that sort of shot where you need to get medium wide and hold some depth of field, but still let that background get a little bit soft and let it recede. So this is a lens that wants to work with a decent amount of ND. In fact, even 6 stops, you may want to be gaining down the ISO on your camera. I was typically shooting at 320 on the C300 just to really get a good exposure and keep that lens wide open or at T2 or so. Flare in this lens is well controlled. It's kind of artsy, it's nice, it's very pleasant, and it's nothing extreme. It doesn't really desaturate or decontrast your image in any ugly way. You just get a nice lens flare off it. So I've added the Rokinon 24mm into my new prime lens collection. I'm pretty happy with it. It's not a extreme lens by any sort, but it's very sharp, it's very contrasty, it flares nicely. It doesn't desaturate, you don't lose excessive contrast when you get light sources into the lens. So it plays nice, for example, if you've got a sun over somebody's shoulder, you'll get some nice flaring action, but it won't wash your image out. It's got great contrast, it's got the gears on it, of course. So overall, this is a nice lens that fits right in the middle of your set. It's not a lens that I'm going to put on the camera every day, but when you have certain restrictions where your camera can only be so far away from you, but you need to get some width, It's that nice, modest wide angle lens that will come to your rescue.